My name is May Ellis, and an hour ago I stopped a $600,000 auction in Washington, D.C., not with lawyers, not with money, but with 3 phone calls and a memory that never failed me. The world calls it a North Star quilt. The catalog called it Unknown Maker. I call it my great-grandmother's heartbeat. 2 months ago, that quilt lay folded at the foot of my cedar bed in Savannah, Georgia. A bed my husband built, a bed that still smells like home. Today it was hanging on a museum wall, tagged with a price and a lie. People think stealing money hurts. Try stealing history. I'm 68 years old. My porch posts creak when Spanish moss brushes them, and my house still whispers every story my family ever stitched into cloth. Because in the Low Country, Black women tell our stories with our mouths and with our stitches. So when that auction catalog showed up in my mail slot, when I saw a River North Star listed for sale, I didn't cry. I didn't pray. I called a lawyer. Her name's Nadine Porter. And together we were about to stop a museum, expose a thief, and remind the world that what they call folk art is our map to freedom. On Tuesday morning, the mailman left a padded envelope wedged into my screen door. Inside was a thick auction catalog from a museum in Washington. I didn't ask for it. I almost tossed it. But there was coffee in my cup and a quiet in the house that made me turn the pages slow. The catalog smelled like ink and money. European oils, rare maps, silver tea services. Then I turned a page and saw a photograph that reached straight through my chest and gripped the back of my heart. The listing called it North Star Variation C 1862, Unknown Maker. It was not unknown. I would know that quilting hand if my eyes were shut and somebody placed the block under my skin. The star points were sharp, notched with an obsessive precision my great-grandmother, Lottie Mason, learned from a woman who patched sails on riverboats. The indigo was dyed so deep the blue carried a faint shadow of black when it turned in the light. And right there in the outer border was a mischief my family calls the Ellis wink. A single half-inch strip of calico running opposite the grain. That was Lottie, showing herself without a signature. My great-grandmother stitched that quilt the winter my great-grandfather carried letters north, hidden in the batting of church robes. I stared at the catalog until the ink went wavy. The estimate said 600 to 900,000. The provenance line said private coastal collection. The consignor line said confidential. It wasn't confidential to me. 2 months ago, I folded that very quilt, our River North Star, into a clean cotton sheet and laid it at the foot of the cedar bed my late husband built when we were 30. I counted each of the 12 quilts we keep for the Ellis line, the ones we bring out only for births, deaths, and hurricanes. I wrote the count on a card and slipped it into a little Bible with cracked leather that lives in my nightstand. I am not a careless woman. So when I saw that star reduce my life to a lot number, I poured my coffee down the drain, wiped my hands, and called the only lawyer who knows my family's habits better than I do. "Nadine," I said when she picked up, "they've put my grandmother on an auction block." "Slow down," she said, because Nadine Porter is the kind of lawyer who can make time obey her. "Tell me which grandmother, which block, and where," I told her. "The catalog number, the pattern, the Ellis wink, the date of the sale." She listened without an interruption, and when I finished, I heard her chair roll and a drawer slide open. "May," she said, paper whispering under her fingers, "tell me you still have the ledger." "I do," I said. "It's in the safe, same place it's been since Reggie died, but that quilt is not." She exhaled once, sharply. "Who had access?" "Family, same as always," I said. "Me, my son, his wife, and me again." "Your daughter-in-law's name is Tara," she said, not as a question. "She's the one who wants you to sell the house and get a condo by the mall." I didn't answer that. She didn't need me to. "I'm calling a judge," she said. "You call the Savannah police and file a stolen property report on the entire Ellis collection and the ledger, just in case. Then call me back. We're going to freeze that lot. Do you understand me? We are going to walk into that museum and ask the North Star to lead us where it always has. I understand a great deal when a woman like Nadine tells me what she will do." I hung up, stared once more at that blue star in the photograph, and walked to the bedroom. The safe is behind a frame with a watercolor of oaks and marsh. Reggie always said a safe behind a painting was a cliché, but thieves respect clichés because they think we lack imagination. The combination is a date and a word, the day my daughter was born, and hush. That word has been in our family longer than I have, and it doesn't mean keep quiet. It means keep close, keep safe, keep this for the day when truth must be lifted into light. I opened the safe and pulled out the ledger. The paper is a deep cream, like old teeth. The cover is patched in red cloth and bound with thread too sturdy to be anything but a woman's work. We call it the Pearl Ledger because Aunt Pearl kept it when Lottie's hand went arthritic. It holds our inventory, not in the language of museums, but in our own. Star quilt, winter of the fire, coded as the preacher told. 2 squares like eyes to watch the boys. 9 patch with the stubborn corner, binding mended by Ruth, rose and thorn used for Carrie's laying out, taken back when the rain came, dates, births, deaths, who stitched, who bled on it by accident, where it lay in the church when the hush fire burned and was put out with well water and gumption. Not one of those quilts ever left this house for good. If they traveled, they did it rolled tight and accompanied by somebody who bore the name Ellis, or somebody who respects it like a vow. I called the police. I reported politely and with more detail than they expected that the River North Star had gone missing. I told them I suspected the theft occurred in the past 2 months and that I had reason to believe the quilt was being offered for public auction. Then I called Nadine back, and while the phone rang, I looked out my bedroom window. The camellias were glossy and pink as candy. The gnats were looping in the heat like they always do. Nothing in this city betrays the fact that the bones beneath its streets are restless. But they are, and I have always heard them. Nadine had already filed with the court when I got her again. We have a temporary restraining order on the sale, she said. I've notified the museum's legal department. I've also alerted a contact at the FBI art crime team. Interstate transport of stolen cultural property is a federal matter, May, and I intend to treat it like one. Now listen to me. I'm listening, I said. Has there been any change inside your house, she said? Any sign someone was building a case to claim you're not competent or that you can't keep track of your belongings? Because the fastest way to launder a theft inside a family is to say the old woman is forgetful. I felt something rise in my chest and harden. It had a name, and the name was the first time my daughter-in-law looked around my living room and said, "We really should clear out all this fabric, May. It makes the house feel dated." "You want my honest answer?" I said. "Always," she said. "There have been remarks," I said. A suggestion or two about assisted living, a brochure left open on the kitchen table that I did not ask to see. And lately, my son coming by with his head lowered, asking if I've considered downsizing because it's a lot of house for one person. And 2 weeks ago, I were told that I must have misplaced the church quilt because aging brains drop stitches. Nadine didn't sigh. Bless her. "Who told you that, May?" "My daughter-in-law," I said. "Her name is Tara, and she has the prettiest smile money can buy. She is 38 years old, raised in a suburb of Charlotte by people who think low country means a brunch buffet. She wears heels in my kitchen and laughs when I tell her the floorboards remember her weight. She calls me Mama May when she wants something, and May when she is certain I won't say no. Do you think Tara took the quilt? I think if she didn't, she knows who did," I said. I also think she believes money is respect and what she calls a better zip code is safety, and she underestimates the cost of both. "I'm sending a marshal to pick you up," Nadine said. "Pack the ledger. Pack any photographs you have of the River North Star. Pack a sweater. We're going to D.C. I don't argue with women who have already made the weather move for me. I set the kettle to boil, habit, and turned it off when I realized time had outrun tea. I went to my son's room. He left my house at 22 and never really came back, but his baseball glove still sits on the top shelf of his closet. I reached past it to the cedar box that holds the oldest of our photographs. I took Lottie in her dark cotton dress. I took my mother holding me, a baby swaddled in a 9-patch. I took the picture of the River North Star draped over the pew in our church during a hurricane, so the rain would see it and be reminded what to spare. When the marshal knocked, I was ready. He offered his arm down the steps. I didn't take it. I have walked those steps longer than his badge has been polished. On the drive to the airport, my phone rang. My son's name lit the screen. Marcus was born breech and stubborn, and he is 43 now without an ounce of his turnaround scraped off him. "Hey, Ma," he said when I answered. "Hello, son," I said. And that was all, because sometimes a mother has to let the silence make room for the truth to show itself. "I heard you called the police," he said. "About a quilt." "About our family," I said. He laughed once. "A brittle thing." "It's a blanket, Ma." "Don't use that word with me," I said. "A blanket is something you throw in the trunk so the dog won't scratch the seat. This is a quilt. It takes inches of thread and months and a woman's back and a life's worth of mornings, and it carries more than warmth. It carries a map of where we came from and a promise of where we won't go back to." He was quiet. "Tara said you must have given one to the church and forgotten." "Did she?" I said. "She also said you've been, I don't know, misplacing things," he said, softer. "Her aunt went through this. At first it was little stuff." "Marcus," I said, "look at me with your grown eyes. Who told you to think for me?" He breathed out. "No one." "Who made you doubt me?" He said nothing. Silence is an answer. "Son," I said, and I could feel my voice steady into an iron that's been in me since I was a girl. I am on my way to Washington because the River North Star has been placed on an auction block by a person who does not own it. If you love me, you will not stand between me and the truth. You will not soften it or sweeten it for anyone in your house. "Ma, I didn't," he began. "I know you didn't," I said, "but you didn't do something else either. You didn't stop Tara when she slid her fingers into my closets and called it tidying. You didn't mind when she said my things made your life look old. And you didn't come sit on my porch and look at me like a person with a mind. You looked at me like a problem to solve, so your foyer could hold one more mirror." He tried to speak. I didn't let him. "I will talk to you when I come back from this trip, and we will decide what kind of man you are going to be while the good days are still on offer." We landed in Washington under a sky that couldn't decide whether to rain or clear. The museum sat on a broad avenue with flags as crisp as new dollar bills. Inside, everything was smooth and white and air-conditioned as an apology. Nadine walked so fast my knees moved like I was 30 again. She carried a folder with my photographs and the pearl ledger copied for safety. When we reached the legal office, a woman in a navy dress was waiting with papers and a smile that was meant to disarm. "Mrs. Ellis," she said, "I'm Julia. We take claims like this seriously." "Then please stop calling that quilt unknown," I said, and handed her the photograph of Lottie's hands. "There's your maker." She studied it. "We have procedures." "I brought you the antidote to procedures," Nadine said, and set the injunction on the table. "You're restrained from offering the lot until title is resolved. We will need the consignment agreement, a copy of the consignor's identification, and any communications relating to acquisition." Julia's smile held. Lawyers' smiles are strong fabric. "We will comply. And you'll take us to the quilt," I said. "Please." She hesitated. "It's against policy to allow outside parties into secured holding areas." "You can bring it out to me," I said. "I won't touch it with my hands. I will touch it with my eyes, and you will watch a woman meet a part of herself she thought she had lost to somebody else's greed. If you have lived long enough, you know when a door will open." 10 minutes later, an archivist wheeled a flat cart into the conference room. On it lay a rectangle under tissue and unbleached muslin. My mouth went dry. She peeled the fabric back like a body shroud, and there it was, 8 points of a star in a blue, so deep the light had to climb to get out. The binding was my grandmother's stubborn stitch. The border carried the Ellis wink. Along the bottom edge, invisible to anybody but us, the whip stitch doubled every 8th pass. That was Lottie counting miles between safe houses when they stitched by candlelight. The archivist glanced at me. "Do you need a moment, Mrs. Ellis?" "Yes," I said. "I need 60 years. I did not cry. Tears have their place. I rested my hand on my own chest, right above the seam where my ribs curved to hold what they hold, and took a breath. Then I leaned in until my old eyes were close enough to see the ghostly impressed line of a pencil in the corner block. A letter and a number measured in a code that never saw a court but always stood up in one. L4, ledger page 4. That was how we tied the fabric to the words. I opened the copy of the Pearl ledger. There it was, in Aunt Pearl's strict backhand. L4, North Star variation, winter of 1862, stitched by LM, bound by Ruth E. coated border for the River Bend, doubled whip for Pastor Rose Barnes, taken to the church for watch night, returned home after the storm when the door had to be called by name. I need to ask a question, the archivist said. This might sound naive. Ask it, I said. We have shed blood for naive questions answered honestly. Did quilts like this truly carry codes for the Underground Railroad, she said? Because we've read debates. Some scholars say it's a myth. Nadine watched me. She knew the answer I would give was not just mine. I spoke slow. There are some stories we can prove on paper and some we can't. White folks have always liked a notarized narrative. Ours didn't have that luxury. We had what we called hush truth. It isn't less true because it hid. It is not more true because you want it to be pretty. This quilt told us where to go and what to be ready for, and it told us in a way that our enemies would glance past. If a scholar wants to call that a myth, she can do it in a book. We did it in the night and lived to see the morning. Julia cleared her throat. Mrs. Ellis, you have made a compelling case. I will tell you frankly that, had counsel not served a restraining order, this lot would have gone to preview tonight and would have hammered tomorrow. The consignor assured us title was clear. The consignor lied, Nadine said. Julia set a sheet of paper on the table and slid her pen into place. We have to contact the consignor. I would prefer... The door opened. A man in a tweed jacket came in, followed by a second in a suit with an agent's haircut. My stomach told me who the second one was before his credentials did. I'm Special Agent Jordan Blake, the man said, flashing a badge. Art Crime Team. You must be Mrs. Ellis. And you must be God's pest control, I said. Come help me chase the termites out my house. He smiled with his eyes. We're honored to assist. We've identified the consignor. The name on the agreement is Pritchard Holdings. Single member LLC, registered in Delaware. The member's name is one I believe you'll recognize. Say it, I said. Tara Whitfield, he said. Your daughter-in-law. It is a particular kind of empty that opens inside you when somebody who ate your food and kissed your cheek steals something your grandmother's breath still warms. The empty is not a hole. It is a room with 4 walls, and you stand in it looking at what used to be. I did not ask why she did it. Greed never needs an essay. It needs an opportunity. Where is she, I asked. In the lobby, he said. We asked her to come in to discuss title. She believes she's here to sign supplementary paperwork. We can confront her with the evidence here, or we can ask her to accompany us downtown. You will be professional, Nadine said. You will be correct, and you will give my client the dignity she is owed. I intend to, he said, then looked at me. Mrs. Ellis? Bring her in, I said. We'll let the quilt do the talking. They brought Tara into the conference room with politeness so clean it squeaked. She looked as she always does, expensive hair swinging like a metronome, a silk blouse shy around the buttons, pearls the size of knuckles, eyes the exact shade of a sweet tea you wish you hadn't ordered. She smiled at me, and I could see the calculation take a corner turn behind her face and come to a stop. Mama May, she said, what a surprise. You didn't tell me you were coming to D.C. Had I done so, I said, you would have had time to do something other than lie. Lie about what? She said, still smiling for Julia, for the agent, for the map of her expectations. The quilt you consigned, Nadine said. It isn't yours. Tara laughed. Oh, this is what this is. Marcus said you'd gotten worked up. He told me you've been a little confused lately. Nadine's mouth thinned. Don't, Miss Whitfield. Don't what? Tara said brightly. Don't worry. I'm the one who's been taking care of that house. I'm the one who has to keep up with all that old stuff. You know how many quilts are just piled in closets down there? It's not safe. I sent a few to storage. I consigned one to make room. I was going to surprise you with a spa renovation for the downstairs bathroom, Mama May. The clawfoot tub is rusting out underneath. The quilt, I said, is named the River North Star. It was stitched by my great-grandmother when a man could be killed for the wrong shape of courage. It does not belong to you. It does not belong to Marcus. It belongs to the Ellis family, held in trust until it is passed to a granddaughter who can tell me the name of every stitch without looking. It left my house without my permission. That makes it stolen." "Are you serious?" she said, the smile cracking. "It's a piece of cloth. Why would anyone pay for it anyway except rich people who like poor people's hobbies? I thought you'd be happy. It's validation." "Miss Whitfield," Agent Blake said evenly, "did you sign this consignment agreement?" He laid the paper before her. She glanced. "Our business manager did." "You are the sole member of Pritchard Holdings, correct?" he said. "That's just for taxes," she said. "Where did you get the quilt?" he said. She opened her mouth and then closed it, because there are moments when your fate decides whether you will be clever or honest. She tried to be clever. "It was in a storage bin under the stairs," she said. "I asked Marcus about it. He said he didn't know that one. He said I could handle it." "Marcus does not own what he did not earn," I said. "And he didn't earn those quilts. Women did. Women you smile at in photographs and call quaint." The agent's phone vibrated. He glanced at it and looked up. "Miss Whitfield, are you aware of a Pine Street storage facility in Savannah?" "Yes," she said. "We executed a warrant there this morning," he said. "We found 2 more quilts matching Mrs. Ellis's ledger and photographs. They were packed for interstate shipment. You'll need to come with us." Tara laughed. She actually laughed. "Are you kidding me? You're going to arrest me for moving blankets around? I'm a donor to 3 children's hospitals. I sit on the gala committee for the art fair. You can't be—" Nadine stood. When she stands, gravity pays attention. "You stole a family's legacy and tried to sell it across state lines," she said. "You misrepresented title to a museum. You attempted to launder provenance through an LLC. I will personally make sure your name is used in ethics trainings for the next 20 years. Tara turned to me then, the smile gone. She was very beautiful without it, in a way that made me sorrow for whatever girl she had been before this one. "May," she said. "Mama May, you have to help me. Tell them we misunderstood each other." I looked at the quilt. The blue held every night my great-grandmother sat with bleeding fingers because she had a world to chart and no map but her stubborn. I looked at Tara. Her eyes were wet. The agent waited, patient as oak. "I will tell them one thing," I said. "I will tell them you called my mind weak when you needed it to be, and you called my house clutter when your spirit was empty, and you called a star a blanket because you preferred your light artificial. Now go with these people and let them do their job." They took her, a polite phrase for something that is mostly paperwork and quiet handcuffs. When she was gone, the room breathed again. Nadine put her hand on my shoulder. "You did right," she said. "I did necessary," I said. "Right is a bigger thing. It will need to wait until my son learns how to talk to me without somebody else's words in his mouth." The weeks that followed were the kind that shake the dust out of every corner of your life. In Savannah, the police turned my living room into a headquarters. I made coffee I did not drink and collard greens I could not taste. Agent Blake came down with 2 more agents, a woman named Alvarez, who took photographs like she could read through walls, and a man named Dent, who cataloged my quilts with careful hands and a face he tried to keep neutral. They found a 5th quilt rolled under a guest bed at my son's house, tied with twine. Looked at me and cried, the kind of damp, quiet crying a grown man does when he realizes he has been a child at a table where other people were playing cards with his pride. "I didn't know," he said. "Ma, I swear, I thought she said—" "I know what she said," I told him. "She said it so your mirrors would be clean and your conscience wouldn't be. Sit down, Marcus. It's time for you to be my son again." He sat. We didn't speak for 10 minutes. I let the room hold us. Then we talked the way men and women have to talk when they are the only ones who remember that love is a roof you fix in the heat, not a song you sing in the shade. He said he was ashamed. I said shame is a poor brick, but it can bear you across a bad river if you walk it carefully. He said he would file for divorce. I said gently that he should speak to a pastor before a lawyer, because vows are not paper, and because leaving clean matters for the soul just as much as it matters in court. He said all the right things, and some wrong ones, and at the end he put his hand over mine the way he did when he was a boy, and the thunder scared him. "Ma," he said, "tell me what to do." "Tell the truth," I said. "Do it in rooms where there are doors and windows and witnesses. Do it to people who know where to put their hands when a storm comes. Do it over and over until your voice stops shaking." News stories came and went like boats on the river. Some were kind, some were curious. A few were mean in that polite way that makes even an insult sound like a fundraiser. Elderly woman clings to quilts. Family says she's confused. Nadine swatted those like flies at a picnic. She held a press conference and smiled with her teeth. She called the quilts cultural property. She said my name like it had 3 syllables and each of them was a bell. She looked at camera lenses like they were children. She was telling a bedtime story that would keep them from monsters they had never seen. The agent called one morning to say the U.S. attorney wanted a meeting. "We've learned something," he said. "I need you to see it." I went downtown to the courthouse, a building so clean inside it felt like a hotel for ghosts. They sat me in a room with windows a person could not open without permission. Agent Blake laid out 6 photographs on the table. Each showed the inside of a quilt's batting. Cotton teased fine, a layer of muslin, a scatter of seeds. "What am I looking at?" I said. He tapped the 3rd photograph. "This is the River North Star, photographed during ecological assessment. When the conservator lifted a corner of the binding to assess damage, she saw additional material packed into the batting." He slid me a 7th photograph. "These," he said, "are map fragments written in graphite and lamp black on onion skin paper. We believe they were hidden inside the quilt, possibly during the Civil War. They depict routes along the Savannah River and denote landmarks that correspond to churches documented as safe houses. If you have ever had your breath leave you and return a different shape, you understand what I felt." I reached for the photograph with hands that suddenly felt like my mother's. The fragments were small. The handwriting was tight and tidy. "Who?" I asked. "We don't know," he said, "but these map pieces match in style and content to others recovered from a church in Beaufort County. This could be significant, Mrs. Ellis, extremely." "Significant to who?" I said. "To the truth? Or to the people who like to eat our truth up and spit it back out as a speech?" "Both," he said, and there was no flinch in it. "And to justice." Agent Alvarez pushed a folder toward me. "There's more," she said. "This will be hard to see." Inside the folder was a transcript of emails. The names were names I knew. An antiques dealer from Charleston, a collector in Atlanta who hosts parties with carved ice, a museum registrar in New York whose mother plays bridge with Nadine's aunt, and there, in the middle, like a nail through a palm, was the email address of a developer in Savannah named Elliot Vance. He's been trying to buy my house for 6 years. He wants to turn my block into a set of condos so pretty you could baptize a baby in the window glass. He signs his emails with an American flag and a quote about heritage. In the 8th email, he wrote to the dealer, "Once the quilts are out of the house, the matriarch will be open to a move. She has no anchor. The son is on our side. The daughter-in-law handles details." I ran my finger beneath the words. I did it like a woman tracing a scar she earned and refuses to cover. "Do I have your permission to burn his porch down?" I said. Agent Blake smiled without meaning to. "Let us take this one to court first." They arrested Tara. They arrested the dealer. They questioned the collector and the registrar. They interviewed Mr. Vance, who came to the courthouse in cufflinks and a suit the color of clay, and spoke in sentences so smooth you could use them to polish silver. He said he was a philanthropist. He said he never wanted anything but what was best. He said he didn't handle details. He had people for that. He looked at me in the hallway and clasped both hands like a preacher about to ask for an offering. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, "let's not turn this into something it isn't." "What is it then?" I asked. "A misunderstanding," he said. "You know how these things go. Younger folks get ambitious. Older folks get scared, lawyers get hungry. None of us wants to see a community torn apart over a few old textiles." I stepped close enough to smell the cologne. It smelled like cedar and negotiation. "You are a man who makes houses," I said. "I am a woman who makes a home. You can't tell the difference because your profit margin doesn't require you to. If you so much as breathe in the direction of my porch again, I will spend whatever years I have left making sure your last name is the answer to a question on a test about people who misunderstood the word neighbor. I walked away because sometimes walking away does more damage than raising your voice. My heels tapped on the marble, and I swear the building got behind me and clapped. Court is slow until it is fast. The U.S. attorney convened a grand jury. Tara's counsel tried to barter with facts she didn't own. Nadine kept 2 calendars and 4 pens, and a mind like a cash register that never makes change wrong. We met in her office 3 times a week. I brought sweet tea, and she drank coffee so black it could read minds. She prepared me for testimony the way my grandmother prepared cloth. Pressing, smoothing, cutting where it had to be cut. Tell the story plainly, she said. Don't reach for their pity. Don't throw away your pride. Use your words like you use your hands. Slow, deliberate, exact. I've been exact my whole life, I said. They'll try to shake that, she said. They will make your age the argument when your evidence is better than theirs. Let them. Then make your age your expertise. You have cataloged a collection for 6 decades. You have cared for cultural property with methods that would make a conservator blush with respect. Say that. I will, I said, and I will say more. At the preliminary hearing, I took the stand in a dress I bought on a day I thought I would bury my sister. It is navy and fits me like a truth. Nadine asked me questions. I answered them. I said my name, I said my age, I said my address, and the courtroom wrote it down like they were all coming to supper. I said the names of the quilts, and the clerk's pen slowed like it had never recorded words that tender. I held the pearl ledger up, and the judge asked me to describe it, and I did so as if it were a child. When the defense asked whether I could possibly keep track of all those objects at my age, I smiled. Sir, I said, I can still thread a needle without glasses. I can still smell the difference between hand-dyed indigo and a dye that came out of a bottle. I can still put my hand into a stack of folded cloth and tell you which quilt is which. By the way the backing whispers, my age is not a question. It is the answer you did not plan for. They asked whether I had ever misplaced things. I said yes. They asked what? I said my temper twice, my faith once for a week in 1983, and my interest in men who thought a woman was furniture. The courtroom laughed. The judge did not. He smiled where his robe hid it. Tara sat at the defense table looking small. It's a cruel thing to notice beauty in a person who has hurt you. It makes forgiveness feel possible at the worst moment to attempt it. She kept her hands folded and her face arranged like a vase. When she stood to speak to the court about miscommunication and family differences, Nadine objected and the judge sustained it. Save it for trial, he said. I like the truth when it's under oath. While we waited for the wheels to grind, the museum invited me to come see the quilts in conservation. This time I accepted. I walked into a room lit like a winter morning. The River North Star lay on a soft table. The batting peeled back at one corner to reveal the inside of a body. The conservator was a woman named Dr. Lila Chen. She wore cotton gloves and spoke to the quilt like it could speak back. Mrs. Ellis, she said, we found more onion skin. There is a list of Latin names for plants common to the riverbanks. There are small marks next to some, likely to indicate which cause a rash and which can be used to draw poison out. I leaned in. The writing was tight and wild at once, like a smart person running. That would have been the deacon's daughter, I said. She kept a book of plants. My mother used to say she could cure everything but pride. Dr. Chen looked at me with the kind of interest that makes you feel seen without being displayed. Would you consider loaning the quilts to the museum for a long-term exhibition? She said. We would insure them properly. We would credit your family fully. We would tell the story with your voice alongside ours. My condition would be that you never call them unknown. Again, I said, they are known. They will be known until we are dust and after. Agreed, she said, and her smile made me hope for the future in a way I hadn't let myself in a while. The trial came in summer. when the air in Savannah is so thick you could cut it with a knife and fry it like catfish. An air-conditioned courtroom is a sin and a blessing all at once. The U.S. attorney laid out the case with that steady kindness prosecutors adopt when they want to sound like justice with lipstick. Nadine sat next to me like a lighthouse. When it was time to testify again, I did what she told me. I told the story without asking anyone to feel sorry for me. I spoke of labor. I spoke of women's backs and hands. I spoke of a family that stitched its own atlas. I did not look at Tara unless I had to. When I did, I saw a woman whose plans had shriveled in the heat of what they never bothered to consider human. On the second day, a different story walked in wearing a blue suit. It was a man I had never met. A conservator from another museum called by the defense to argue that the quilts were folk art of uncertain value and that I had over-attached emotionally to objects lacking formal provenance. He pronounced provenance like a mantra. Nadine let him finish and then stood. "Sir," she said, "did you read the Pearl Ledger?" "I did," he said. "Charming, but informal." "Did you examine the onion skin maps?" she said. "I saw copies," he said. "Could be anything." "Did you put your hands on a single stitch?" she asked. "No," he said, "not our job." "Whose job is it to decide what matters?" Nadine asked, as if she were asking about the weather. He blinked. "The experts," he said. Nadine looked at the jury like she had just introduced them to a neighbor who leaves his dog out all night. "Thank you," she said. On the third day, Tara's lawyer called Marcus. My son wore a suit that fit him and a tie I gave him when he turned 30. He looked like a man who had lost everything he thought he wanted and stood in a world where the good things were finally visible. They asked him whether I had ever been forgetful. He said yes, and then he named the times I forgot everything but the names of the children nobody else had remembered to invite to their birthday parties. He told the jury how many scholarships I had mended with bake sales and an ugly jar on a church table. He ran out of breath, and the judge let him drink water, and the courtroom was quiet in that way that means it is listening for the first time. On the afternoon of the fourth day, Tara asked to speak. Her counsel tried to stop her. She looked at me and at the judge and said, "Please." The judge nodded. She stood and held the rail like a woman on a ship. "I did it," she said. "I took the quilts. I thought—" She closed her eyes and opened them. "No, I didn't think. I felt small in a house where everything was old and I was new. I felt judged by a woman who didn't judge me. I wanted to make room for myself, and I tried to do it by selling what belonged to someone else. I thought, there's the word again, that if I made the house lighter, I would feel less heavy. I am sorry." The judge tilted his head. "To whom?" She looked at me. "To Mama May," she said, and then as if she were remembering something for the first time. "To the women who stitched." Apologies come cheap. I don't buy them without reading the label. The jury did its work. It found her guilty of interstate transport of stolen property, wire fraud, false statements, and a list of things that sound dry until you realize they mean a childhood wrapped in something else's hands. The dealer took a plea. The collector returned 2 quilts and a painting that did not belong to him. The registrar resigned. Mr. Vance got quiet for the first time in his life and stayed that way after a federal grand jury tutored him on what conspiracy means. The judge surprised us all. He walked in on sentencing day without the robe. He wore a suit and a tired look, and he spoke to Tara like a father who had not given up on a daughter but could not live with her under his roof. "Miss Whitfield," he said, "you are going to prison. You are going for long enough to change how you move in the world. While you are there, you will work in the library. You will read about labor you did not have to do, and you will write reports until your hand cramps. When you come home, you will do service for the museum in a program that teaches children whose names you do not currently know to value what their grandmothers touched. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Your Honor," she whispered. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, turning to me, "I have no authority to do anything for you that you need done. You have been doing it for yourself. But if you would consent, I would like permission to visit the quilts when they are on exhibition. I would like to bring my mother." "You bring your mother," I said, "and I'll put a chair beside her and a glass of sweet tea in her hand." The museum announced the exhibition in the fall. They called it Stitched North. The subtitle was mine, and I will boast of it because it is the only time in my life I have enjoyed a colon in a title. Family Atlas of the Low Country. The River North Star hung alone on a blue wall. The onion skin maps lay in a glass case so the lights could learn their lines. The labels were simple: L4, L7, L12. Each card had a quotation from the Pearl Ledger and a line from a woman in my family, spoken into a recorder and transcribed by a girl intern who started to sit up straighter after the third one. A photograph of Lottie's hands hung in the entryway, blown up so you could see the roughness that comes from cooking for other people's children without being paid what you were owed. I was there the morning the doors opened. I wore a green dress because my mother told me the trees would always receive me when people would not. Marcus stood next to me in a good suit, and he held my elbow like he used to do when he was taller than his sense. People came in quiet. Some cried. Some reached out and stopped themselves. Because a museum is a place where touching is a wish, we ask children to swallow. Dr. Chen gave a little talk. Nadine introduced me. I said thank you and a few more words because a woman after 60 knows when to stop. That night, back in Savannah, I sat on my porch and the air was a stew and the stars were hiding because the city forgets to turn the lights off when it should. My phone buzzed, a number I did not recognize. I let it go to voicemail and then I listened. "May," Tara's voice said, thinner but still hers. "I'm allowed one call tonight. I chose you. I know that's a lot of nerve. I wanted to say, books can fix part of me. Prison can fix part of me. But the part of me that broke wasn't because of lack. It was because of envy. I envied a house that breathed. I envied a family that knew what to do with its hands. I envied a woman who could stand still and be seen. I'm sorry." I slept badly. Not because of her words, because of what hours do to each other when we are reckless with them. In the months that followed, things grew. The exhibition traveled. The museum hired me as a consultant without putting that word in quotes. I became a trustee. Imagine that. A black woman in her late 60s telling a boardroom full of people when to spend money on humidity control and when to spend money on folding chairs so grandmothers could sit with dignity. I said no to a documentary because they wanted me to cry in a kitchen with the good light, while a white woman explained my legacy to a camera. I said yes to a program we started in Savannah called the Hush Truth Project. We give small grants to families to document their heirlooms on their own terms. We teach high school kids how to interview their elders without turning them into exhibits. We buy acid-free tissue in bulk. We make photocopies of ledgers, and we teach a boy who thinks he has no place in a museum that he can be a conservator with gloved hands, not a security guard with a baton. Marcus divorced Tara. He did it clean. It hurt him, and it hurt her, and it hurt every person who stood near them when they walked away in opposite directions. He brings me groceries now when I don't ask. He shows up on Tuesdays with a willingness to do chores that would have been easier for him 20 years ago. He has a girlfriend now, a woman named Denise. She's a nurse and a mother. And she walks into my kitchen and washes her hands before she touches anything. And that is how I know she was raised by somebody who taught her respect. One Sunday afternoon after church, Denise stood in my doorway and looked at the quilt stacked on the cedar shelves. She's 35 and has the kind of face that will still be beautiful when the world has smoothed it with time. "Miss May," she said, "do you ever get tired?" "Of what?" I asked. "Of explaining," she said, "of proving, of having to tell people that something matters that you can hear shouting even when it's folded." I thought about the museum. I thought about the courtroom. I thought about the boy in my program who cried because the only object his family had from his grandmother was a pie plate with a crack through the middle, and he thought it wasn't enough until I put it on a white table and photographed it like it was a saint. "I get tired," I said, "and then I get up and iron a border and the rest of me follows." She nodded. Marcus came in with a bag of limes and set them on the counter like a man glad to have somewhere to set his hands. He kissed my temple, the way he always used to do before a ball game, like my head held all the luck he needed. "Ma," he said, "Dr. Chen called. They're naming a fellowship after you, for young conservators from the South." "What for?" I asked. "For making them do their job right," he said, and then he laughed, and I did too. One day in winter, when the air was a thin cold you can break just by breathing deep, a man I recognized only from newspaper photographs walked up my front path. He was tall and heavy and built like expensive decisions. He knocked. I opened the door and did not smile. "Mrs. Ellis," he said, "I've come to apologize." It was Mr. Vance. He held his hat in his hands. His hair was the kind that makes a barber feel talented. He stood on my porch like it could forgive him. "Come in," I said. Apologies freeze on the porch and track in like mud. In my living room, he looked around at the photographs and did not sit until I told him to. He cleared his throat. Men like him are always clearing their throats because they are used to rooms falling quiet for them without their bodies doing any work. "I was wrong," he said. "I believed the story I told myself. It was a good story. It had jobs in it. It had tax revenue. It had the word modern. It did not have your grandmother's hands. I am sorry." "What do you want in exchange for that?" I asked. He had the decency to look down. "A project," he said. "We are restoring a row of houses on Whitaker Street. We would like you to sit on the advisory board and tell us when we are pretending to preserve when we are actually erasing. We will pay you. It will make your lawyer proud." I thought about it. I said yes. If you get a chance to adjust the thread on a loom that's been making the same pattern of mistakes for a century, you take it. The first meeting, I told a room full of people their renderings were pretty lies. I asked where the accessibility was for elders who don't walk like they used to. I asked where the space was for the lady who sells pralines out of her kitchen to pay for her granddaughter's braces. I asked where the chairs were on the porches and whether they were heavy enough to sit in or decorative enough to throw away. By the fourth meeting, I had 3 allies. By the 10th, we had a budget line called Dignity. I would like to say I am proud of that. I am. But I am more proud of the day they changed the plans for a ramp, so the man down the block who lost part of his foot in the sugar refinery could bring his walker up without catching it on the threshold. The day the Quilts came home, the house threw the windows open by itself. I laid each one on the bed and talked to them like I would to babies back from a long trip. Did they handle you gentle? Did they speak to you by your name? Did they show you to people who deserved you? I slid the River North Star back into its sheet cocoon. I slid the ledger into its place. I closed the safe with that old word and the feel of the handle like a handshake. At dusk, I made a pot of red rice and fried chicken with a crust that would make you weep if you were a different sort of person. Marcus came. Denise came. 2 kids from the Hush Truth Project came. Dr. Chen came, and Nadine and Agent Blake, who said he was off duty and did not bring a badge into my kitchen because he was a man with sense. We ate. We talked about nothing because everything had been said. When the plates were empty, I stood up and knocked my knuckles on the table. "I have a favor to ask," I said. "It will cost you a minute and your pride." We cleared a space on the floor. I set the River North Star down. We washed our hands, we took off our shoes, we stood around the quilt and looked down at what our people made when the world called them property, and they called each other home. And then we did a thing I learned from my grandmother when the storm passed and the power finally came back on. We put our hands on the edges and we pulled, gently, to square it. The lines fell true. The corners recognized each other. The star laid itself quiet, and the old cotton exhaled a breath it had saved for a day when it would be safe to do so. When I woke the next morning, the house smelled like we had hosted angels and fed them everything they asked for. I walked out on the porch, and the street smelled like river and bakeries and bad plans being hatched too early by men in suits. I sat. The bench complained, the way a loved one does when you sit on their lap joking. A boy rode by on a bike too small for his legs. He waved. I waved back. By now, you know I have a show. They call it Grandma's Gavel because Nadine said I swing a story like a judge. It's nothing more than me in a chair talking to people who have objects and no language yet for what they mean. We have a segment called Show Us Your Hands. We film fabric and faces and tools, and we try to catch on camera the moment a granddaughter learns her grandmother's stitch. We send the footage to the museum when we can. We send it to the families when that matters more. Sometimes people send us money. We spend it on boxes that don't eat paper and on kids who can learn to be the kind of adult who puts a chair out front on evenings when the air remembers June. One last thing, I get letters. This one came from a woman in Ohio who said her grandmother was from Beaufort and used to hum while she sewed something that wasn't clothes. She sent a photograph. It showed a quilt block I know, like the back of my own hand. She asked if I thought it was worth anything. Yes, I wrote back. Yes, it is worth your history, and that is not something you sell. That is something you underline. If you're still here, thank you. If this story found you when you were ready to hear it, tell me where you're from. Tell me what you keep in a box that's not fancy. Tell me what your grandmother called you when you were small. And if somebody tells you something you love is a blanket, when you know it is a map, stand up gently, put your hands on the corners, pull until the star is true. I will be here. I will be the woman on the blue porch with thread on her dress and a ledger on her lap. I will be telling the beads of our stories one by one, and I will be listening for the sound a house makes when it knows it was never for sale.